Hornbostel. I live now in Belgium, in Ghent, as I'm part of the Ghent. And before I lived in different cities of Germany. Actually, theater was my whole life part of my free time, but as well I started to kind of trying it out more professionally. But I was scared actually of this big business and seeing a lot of people fail as well and not having a real future there. So I decided for myself, no, that's not the way I want to go, and started to study psychology, so more the personal drama. So I did this, and it was actually one of the best things I could do in my life, and I'm very grateful for this, and it helps me now in my job. After I worked in an ambulance for people with psychological problems, I had the feeling that it's coming closer and closer to me and that I can't separate anymore from it. And I still wanted to kind of work with drama, but I had the feeling I need another level, meta level, to deal with these personal dramas. So I went actually back to theater. That's how I got there, and then I started to work in different productions at the Dramaturgist Theater Berlin, later on at the Theatertreffen in Berlin at the Festspiele. And I always thought, okay, what theater needs as well is the political level, and this interested me a lot. So I asked Milo Rau and his company, the IIPM, if they would need some support, and so I started to work with them for the General Assembly. That was my first production. I work now with Milo and the IIPM, which I started with since 3.5 years. What inspires me, and that was the starting point for me, was really the political level. So saying that theater doesn't stop with Shakespeare, it doesn't stop with the classics, but we have to rewrite them and find the present translations. And I was fascinated by his way to do it, so that was what inspired me. And then of course the project General Assembly was the perfect starting point for me. So I think the main point for me is the research, what differs, because I think later on there's not such a big difference anymore to a classical play where you have your concept and you say, okay, like this we will change it. But it's actually the openness. So we start all the projects by actually knowing nothing, and with a great openness to learn, to find something, to understand things, or just to try to understand them. So this is actually the main point, that this research, and that you have to deal with saying, okay, there is not a text at the beginning, there is no base. To really have this opening to ask the questions, what interests me, for example, if I think about the world politics, if we take another example of the General Assembly. So yeah, that's the main difference for me, to say, okay, no concept at the beginning, a lot of ideas, a lot of things already in the head, but at the end it will change everything. So definitely, because I think there are different forms of theaters and we need different forms. It's the richness that we have, but for me personally, I'm really longing as well for this magic of theater that it can have for me to change something. Sometimes only very personally, or giving me a new thought, or activating me. So this is the theater I'm longing for. Usually we start with a question that is always interesting us, or a problem or something we're observing. So as far as we have a question, and usually these questions are theoretical questions, to start searching for actually what does it mean in the reality. So who's actually, for example, if we say we see an injustice problem, who is really the ones suffering out of it? Trying to find people to talk about it, and that's actually where we go on. So we have a first question, then we meet people having the real experience with something that we want to know more about, if it's a genocide, if it's a political idea that people have, if it's something just a very personal thought, or so people who have, for example, lost somebody, then we go and ask them, because we actually don't know it yet. And from this first conversations, there will be the next very interesting question that pops up that we didn't even know before. And so we go on by meeting people, for example, and find out what is really interesting for us, and then we start developing out of these conversations a kind of first theater script, an idea which topics do we want to talk about, and then there comes the magic of the theater. So we're doing more or less everything collective, it feels like. So we usually really start basically by transcribing and having a full text, for example, just by interviews or talks that were interesting. And then we start, I would say, reducing the reality and putting in the fiction. And this is a very close work of everybody in the team. So it's not like the director is separated and has ideas, or the dramaturg. No, we sit there together, and as well it's super important to have, for example, the sound design from the beginning, to have Jens Baudisch being part of it, or Anton Lucas as the set designer, to develop together these ideas, and this will as well draw the path where we are going. So it's very collective, and all the different theater departments give their input to actually, this result. So, and it's often that we have a first idea and we think, okay, this is super, and then you try it out on stage and you see that the theory fails on stage, and then we start all over again. But at the end, this is the process that we're doing. I don't know the word in English actually, that you have this where you put in your spaghettis to get out the water, and at the end you will have what you want. The biggest challenge, but as well the biggest advantage, is that we usually really work with people. So it's not a book that I'm working with, it's a human, and this is actually best you can have, because you get the most interesting stories, you get the what is really triggering everybody in everybody's life. So of course you have this in Shakespeare or whatever, but just to see how time changes, and then you have this human sitting in front of you telling you a banal story, but you feel, wow, yeah, this is the thing. There's so much poetry in the everyday life. It's incredible for me every time. But of course this makes it complicated as well, because a book has no feelings, the one in front of you does have, and as well a lot of fears or desires. So it's really a working together. So not only the artistic team, but as well always the people we're interviewing and working with, and this is the base for everything. So to have a good relation as well, to see what do they want to kind of get out of this interview, what is their desire, why are they doing it, and what are looking we for. So sometimes it works good, and sometimes of course not that good. Yes, that's an easy one. So I think what we can expect is a very intimate play, as usually the Jedermann, what it is based on, as a political play more, a social critique. We're telling you how a good life should be, but this is a very intimate one. So two women coming together and actually talking about death that is in front of them, for the one more than for the other, and talking about the big questions that we have about how to die, about how to live, but as well about loneliness and community, about how we see death and what happens actually in the last moments. That was a long process, so first we usually try to contact institutions. In this case we worked with, what's the word in English? Hospice, so homes where people can go when they can't live on their own anymore and they're only there because they know that it's definite that they're gonna die very soon, and there they get help, they get people who accompany them on this way. So we first started to contact these institutions, and then we met different clients of them from very different backgrounds, with very different stories, with different reasons why they are in such an institution. So, there are a lot of sentences that really touched me, and I think this is one of the advantages I have, because the public sees the result, sees the performance, but I've been in all this process. So, for example, what we did in the team and talking to this woman who is going to die and having her in the rehearsal room and hearing all her personal stories and seeing her emotions that we cannot fit all in this performance. This is incredible. So, for example, to see how somebody who's actually knowing that she's gonna die still reacts if you have a sentence that she has to say. For example, I will die, I have a diagnosis that is irreversible. Then this touches me so much to see how it's for her very different to say it for her own and say it on a stage. What makes it kind of suddenly reality for her, what it wasn't before. So. Actually, Corona did affect it, because the first plan, and how I said, we always have a lot of plans and they change, was to make a political play in Brazil. So we all went to Brazil and started working there, and then we got the news that everything will be closed down and that we have to leave and go back to Europe. So there was a stop in the project, and we started to rethink what we're doing and what we need. And actually, out of all these conversations and the changes that this community is right now what we are missing, and being lonely and we're separated, out of this came the idea, or was born, that we make a very intimate play actually about a single human being and not about the world. So my main role was actually the research. That's this of course is the question. As I said, we met a lot of people who actually, are you looking for the one with an activist life? Are you looking for somebody who is every man or every woman? Or so this is the main point of the atmosphere where I am part to create it, to say who's actually on stage and who is being represented. Yeah, it's for me personally a very strange combination. As well, Corona and the Salzburg Festival, of course, is a very classical festival. But it's a great honor to be here, to be invited, and as well to open the festival for different forms, and not only classical music or only classical theater, but mixing it. I think as everybody, I'm hoping that everything will work out fine and that we can still, under the circumstances, enjoy art, enjoy being together with a distance. But I, of course, have my questions as well. How will this work out, and is this the future we will have? How festivals will be, or theater evenings? It's hard to say this is a tryout, because it's not a tryout. If somebody dies, then it's definite. So yeah, I have my mixed feelings about it, but life will never stop, so. So for me it's a General Assembly, because this was a project that really uses the power of theater, I would say. So creating a world parliament to say there is an injustice in our world and we have a room where we can set up the experiment to change it. It's not that it has to be perfect afterwards, or that we have to present an answer or a result in theater. No, but it's an experimental room where we can try out, where we can actually fail and make it better and better. So we invited activists, politicians, people who are in the different movements. We invited them and said, okay, we create a world parliament. Because people are, for example, touched by the policy we're doing in Germany, but they love somebody completely different, for example, in the Congo or in Brazil, and they have no right to speak up in the German parliament. So this was our way to say, okay, let's create the utopia of a world parliament and see what happens. Without a script, actually, without knowing what the result will be. And this is a magic for me that is incredible. It's actually a pleasure. It's for me always a pleasure to watch something that is totally different. It was great. I was fascinated, actually. It was a bit a strange situation, as it was a dress rehearsal and very reduced people, and nobody was sitting next to me, so that was, I think, atmospherically, of course, something you feel that there's something missing. Yeah, and maybe they come to our dress rehearsals and then you can ask them the same question. Of course, everyone. No, I'm actually looking forward to the premiere of Every Woman, to have it done, and then to the Jedermann, of course, as it's the first time for me at the Salzburg Festivals to see it once. To actually more or less everything. I want to see Hanke, I want to see Elektra, so there are a lot of things I'm looking forward, and then to have the chance to enjoy this atmosphere of a festival with some distance, but yeah.